lights here? I'm missing half of my lights. I can't see. And so I'm moving my head. I'm like, oh, well, that's the problem. But then, let there be light. All right, good morning. How's everybody doing? That's good. Turn with me, if you would, in your Bibles to Jeremiah chapter 6. Jeremiah chapter 6. Those of you that are on live stream and are wondering why I'm wearing a hat and blue jeans, can you guys believe that your preacher is wearing a blue jeans in church and a gun? Do you see that? See that thing? It's because today we are celebrating our fifth Sunday, but also Second Amendment Sunday. So on this day in July, we usually open carry. Everybody's encouraged to open carry on this day. And the reason why I'm in a hat is because it's old-fashioned Sunday as well. And so some of us are dressed up old-fashioned. Some of us have always been dressing old. I know, I'm just digging a tunnel here. So what I would like to do this morning is we are going to read the Second Amendment, but because today is also Old-Fashioned Day, I'm going to kind of lean in that direction. Instead of preaching on what the Second Amendment says, I would like to more focus on the old-fashioned portion of what we're doing today. Normally, I would find some scriptures, some verses in the scriptures that would speak on armed citizens. You read about David's mighty men, the first three, all the things that they did for the Lord. We would normally look at things like that, but today, like I said, I want to go towards the old-fashioned. And so I'll read the Second Amendment. And it says this: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. So what is it if you don't have a well-regulated militia? What kind of state would you have? Well, the opposite of a free state. So a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Boy, there's a lot there, isn't there? And you wonder why the attack is on the Second Amendment, the attack is on the First Amendment, like it is. You know, the real killers in the world today, have you guys ever heard of fentanyl? How many hundreds of people get killed by fentanyl every single day? And yet they're not attacking that, are they? How many hundreds of people are killed a day by drunk drivers? And yet we're not attacking alcohol companies, we're not attacking car companies, and we're not really going after drunk drivers, are we? Not like when 27 people are killed by one man using a gun, and it's the gun's fault. The reason why they're attacking that and the First Amendment is to keep people like me from saying things like that over live stream. So we take out the freedom of speech, we take out the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. What they want to do is shred the Constitution. That's what they want to do. And so that's why there's a big attack on guns. There's a big attack on the First Amendment. Instead of an attack on the fentanyl, instead of attacking cartels, and if they put as much resources into going after the cartels as they are against. Now, listen to this. Law-abiding citizens keeping and bearing arms, we wouldn't have a fentanyl problem if they would do that. I told you I wasn't going to preach on that. That was free. I'm not even going to, well, I don't know. Jay, why don't we take another offering for that one? All right, Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 16. Let's get into the old-fashioned part. Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 16. This is the church's verse. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways and see and ask for the old paths." Ask for the old paths. Now, what book are we in? Where is the book Jeremiah? Is it the Old Testament or the New Testament? It's the Old Testament. Now, is it in the beginning of the Old Testament, the middle of the Old Testament, or the end of the Old Testament? It's kind of in the middle, isn't it? So we got a couple of books. We at least have Moses' 5 books, and we might have Joshua, and we might have Judges, and we might have Samuel and Kings. Maybe. We definitely have Job. We would have some of the, well, I don't know if Psalms would have been written out or distributed. They would have been written, but I don't know if they would have been published out. So what are the old paths? Then if we're speaking in the middle of the Old Testament, what would the old paths be? That's a pretty good question, isn't it? By the way, let's read the verse. Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways. I love the word stand. Don't waffle in the ways. Don't wiggle around in the ways. You know what that is? You're being, I can't even think in English now. Say it again. Okay, double-minded is good. Double-minded is good. Flippy-floppy is what I was going for, but that's not the right term. Wishy-washy, there's what I'm looking for. I knew it wasn't flippy-floppy. Wishy-washy. I love the word stand. We're to stand in the ways and see and ask for the old paths. By the way, in Jeremiah, he's telling you to ask for the old paths, so the old paths must not have been prevalent. It says, where is the good way? And walk therein, ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. So even in the Old Testament, we're getting away from God, aren't we? Even in the middle of the Old Testament, we're getting away from God. If you know anything about Jeremiah, he's known as the weeping prophet. God told him when he called him, I'm going to send you to a people and they're not going to listen to you. Matter of fact, they're going to hate you. They're going to reject everything that you say, but go anyways. I don't know if I could be Jeremiah. Wait. I am Jeremiah. I'm kidding. What's the old paths? Well, let's take a look. There's one passage in the scriptures that kind of sums up the old paths. Go with me to Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. Oh, next, John. I was wondering if it got around the room to you finally. Hebrews chapter 11, starting in verse number 1. Now, if I was to tell you that the old paths were found in the Old Testament, would I go to Hebrews really to well, we'll see that, won't we? Verse number 1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Well, who are those elders? Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. You know, the first old path that we need to get to, and I'm sorry that I have to say this to a church full of Christians, is we need to get back to God created everything in 6 literal 24-hour days. You know, one of those old paths that we need to go back to is God created in 6 days. There's some pastors, there's some churches out there that are teaching this theistic evolution. That, God started the Big Bang and then he let it go. Are you hissing at me in the preaching? Thank God I'm not one of those guys. He'd be hissing at me. And here's what they say. In the New Testament, there's the verse that says, a day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. They take that verse out of context and they put it into the creation context, and they say, well, really, God created everything in 6,000 years. It's called the day-age theory. And one of those old, by the way, if you know anything, I haven't had my Hebrew class yet. I'm still supposed to take Hebrew. I haven't had it yet, but I've known this for a long time. The word for day in the Old Testament in Hebrew is yom. Y-O-M in English letters. It's yom. If it is ever modified by anything, it can only ever mean 24-hour period. And so when God says this is the first day, didn't he just modify the word yom with first? It can only ever mean 24-hour period. And so we need to get back to that old path of God created everything. By the way, if God created everything, who's in control? What can the Creator do with His creation? Whatever He wants. We get that in the Scriptures, don't we? And it's about the potter. Have any of you ever worked with clay? Like maybe in a high school class or an elementary school class, or maybe you did it, professionally, or you went to college and you did that. You ever work on the wheel where you're kicking the wheel? Now they got electric wheels. You don't even have to kick it. I'm showing my age, aren't I? I remember taking a pottery class one time, way back when David was 30. You had hair at 30? Ooh. I think I need to see a picture. Did they have cameras back then? Lift it up and put it down. I'm terrible. I'm going to get off of that. God created. As a matter of fact, in Exodus chapter 20, if we go along with the day age, and I've brought this up before, so I'm not really going to go in depth, but in Exodus chapter 20, where we have the 10 Commandments, he gets down to thou shalt keep the Sabbath day. You guys remember that? And he says, 6 days shalt thou work, and on the seventh thou shalt rest, as the Lord rested after the 6 days of creating. So if we take the day-age theory and we put it into Exodus chapter 20, maybe we need to look there. Maybe you guys need to look there. I hate to have you miss this. Although I think I'm preaching to the choir here. Exodus chapter 20, verse number 8, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Verse 9, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath day of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And so if we keep to the day-age theory, then we have to work for 6,000 years before we get to rest for 1,000. Now, we joke around and we play around in here with David and with Randy sometimes and Art and come back to me and all of that. But David, are you anywhere near 6,000 years old? I'm not saying what you feel like. I'm just asking, are you? Chronologically, we're not anywhere near 6,000 years old. Have you rested? No, you got to work. Do you see where I'm going? You got to work. So we need to get back to that old path of God created everything in 6 literal days. Verse number 4 back in Hebrews chapter 11. By faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. Doesn't it sound like God accepted Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's? Would you say way back when there were 4 people on planet Earth that God's way was the only way? God said, let's see if this verse sounds familiar. God said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Is that in the Old Testament? No, here we have, I say 4 people, we have 4 named people. Okay, we have 4 named people. Now, there was plenty more because we see that Adam and Eve had sons and daughters, and we're not given their names. We have 4 named people on planet Earth. And one of them offered the right sacrifice, and one of them offered the wrong one. So even back then, when we have 4 named people on planet Earth, don't we still see that God's way is the only way to get into heaven? Don't we see that God's way is the only way to be called righteous? By the way, righteous just means right in God's eyes. Still talking about those old paths, right? So number 1, in church, Christians need to be reminded that there were 6 literal days of creation. We also need to be reminded that there's only one way of salvation. And that's through Jesus Christ. And of course, we just quoted John 14:6. If you have a pastor or anybody else that gets up and says, well, there's many roads to heaven, they're liars. That's a lie. From the beginning, God said, here's an acceptable sacrifice and here's an unacceptable sacrifice. The next one, verse number 5, by faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and he was not found because God translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony that he pleased God. And I wrote next to that, God showing us his rewards. Doesn't God promise us rewards? Crown of righteousness. There's 5 crowns. And we get jewels, and we're going to the judgment seat of Christ. And on it is that foundation, which is Jesus Christ. And we build on it gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble. How we do jobs. Not the jobs that we do, but your attitude while you're doing it. Your motive, why you do that. Why you teach Sunday school class. Why do you come and help clean the church? Why do you do whatever you do in the church? Why do you do whatever you do for God? Why? You know, that's what's going to be judged. When was sin judged? It was judged on the cross. So we're not going up to the judgment seat to find out if we're saved or we're lost. We're going up to the judgment seat to have our motives checked. Oh boy. I'm preaching this message right now, but I'm doing it totally in my own flesh. I'm doing it because somebody said something and I really want to get them. Is that a good motive or a bad motive? By the way, should a pastor ever preach about something he hears out there? You know, that's not the place for it. That's not the place for it. If you've ever had that happen in the past, I'm sorry. I try not to do that here. Now, if it just so happens to happen, it just happens. Who is that? That's the Holy Spirit. But what I'm saying this morning is if I'm preaching this message in my own flesh, and it's because it's a message that I want to preach, is that gold, silver, precious stones, or wood, hay, stubble? Yeah, it's going to burn up in the judgment. If you come and clean the church, well, I'm cleaning the church because the pastor is going to be mad at me if I don't clean the church. Well, number 1, that's not true. By the way, I'm always grateful when we come in here and the church is cleaned. Always grateful. Bathrooms are clean. How many of you love doing toilets? Well, you heard my wife. That's her favorite. Betty, is that your favorite? That is not your favorite. No. Lauren, is that your favorite? No. Anybody? Is the cleaning the nope. Cleaning toilets your favorite? No. Cleaning toilets is your favorite. I used to be an industrial janitor when I was in Bible school, and it was cool because I walked in there with a jet spray like this, and then I walked in there with a jet rinser, and then I walked around with a squeegee and squeegeed it all down the drain. I love doing toilets that way. That's awesome. But I'm cleaning the toilet because Pastor makes me. Good motive, bad motive? That's a bad motive. I think I brought this up before through my military career when I finally got my mind and my heart right. I started, and you guys are going to laugh, I started loading bombs for the Lord. That was my job in the Air Force. I put bombs on airplanes. I put ammunition on airplanes. I took care of the weapon systems. That was my job, troubleshooting. And I did it in such a way that if Jesus was going to come and be one of the pilots, that bomb better drop. And of course, Jesus wasn't going to pilot one of those planes, but what if he did? That bomb better drop. And so it didn't matter who was sitting in that seat. The reason that I was doing my job the way that I did it was to please God, as if he was the one that was going to use that. Now, bring that to the toilet in the church. What if Jesus was to walk in and have to go to the bathroom? Did you clean that toilet in a way that the Lord was going to use it? Something to think about, isn't it? God brings his rewards, and I believe that's what he did with Enoch when he translated him. He saw that Enoch was living righteous in an unrighteous world, and he said, I think Enoch needs to be rewarded, and so I'm going to bring him to heaven early. Wouldn't you call that a reward? Verse number 6. But without faith it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Doesn't that sound like that should be in the New Testament? Well, it is. We're in Hebrews, aren't we? But doesn't it sound like we're in Genesis? All right, let's look at the next one. By faith, verse 7, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. How many people went in the ark? 8 people went into the ark. Let's not forget Noah. 8 people went into the ark. How many animals? Well, 2 of every kind. And 7 of some. 2 of every kind, 7 of some. I mentioned this a couple of years ago. My wife and I were able to go to that Ark experience. And by the way, if you can ever make it, I would highly recommend it. Go to the Ark experience. You walk on they took the measurements from the scriptures and designed it the way that Ken Ham thought it was supposed to be designed. We'll give him a little design, freedom. But the dimensions are the same. They had all the cages for all the kinds of animals in there. They had all the food stored. They even had water stored. They even had a way to clean out all the stalls. It was pretty awesome the way that they did all that. And was there any room left? There's lots of room. As a matter of fact, I just saw on my Facebook feed that a group of 532 campers, I think it was a youth camp, went to the Ark experience at one time. Do you know who all fit in there? Yeah, all 532 plus the hundreds that normally show up every day anyways. There was room on that ark for thousands and thousands of more people. Wasn't it a choice to get onto the ark? And what was the reason for the ark? I have God's judgment. You know, and it's scriptural, God judges sin, doesn't he? God judges sin. It's only been a couple of generations since creation, and God judged sin with a worldwide flood. By the way, it was a worldwide flood. Can I say it again? It wasn't localized like those day-age theorists say. It was worldwide. How is it that you could go up onto Mount Lemmon and find seashells? Tell me again, Justin, how tall is Mount Lemmon? I always want to say 14,000. 9158. I always want to say 14,000 for some reason. 9,158 feet above sea level. Isn't that a lot of feet? How did those seashells get up there? I got a theory. I heard a speaker a long time ago, he'd start off like that. How did seashells get up there? I got a theory. About 6,000 years ago, God created the heavens and the earth. He put man on it. Man began to sin. Got to this place where God was going to destroy the world. He called this man Noah to build an ark. He built an ark over 100 years to build it. He got up on there, and then there was this flood. He caused it to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. But it's not just rain. He broke up the deep. And the heavens, the windows of heavens opened up. So there's like a worldwide kablushing from this way, and then there's a worldwide kablushing from this way. Those are Hebrew words. Look them up. Look them up. God's judgment. Killed everything that was alive, except for 8 people. God judges sin, doesn't he? And if you ever think that he doesn't, go back to the old paths. Go back to it and look for the old ways. All right, let's continue on. So verse number 7 now. Verse number 8. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed and went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith, he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, and the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. What did God do with Abraham there that we could glean? You know, God still calls people into his service, into his ministry. God still calls. He called him in the old days. He told Abraham, arise and go to a place that I'm going to show you. He didn't even tell him where he was going. It's just arise and go. And Abraham got up early in the morning and he went. Verse number 11, still talking about Abraham and Sarah. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. How old was Sarah? 99. 99. Any 99ers in here? We're talking about chronological. Any 99ers in here? How about any 60ers? How would you like to be called mommy and have a little rugrat running around? How would you like that? You're only 60. You got 30 more years to go before. Right? God keeps his word though, doesn't he? Didn't he promise to Sarah, to Abraham and to Sarah, that they were going to have a promised son, and through that son was the nation going to be born, and he was going to have the children as the sand of the sea and so on and so forth, stars in the sky. It wasn't through Ishmael, because that wasn't Abraham and Sarah. God keeps his word, doesn't he? Even though sometimes we think it might be long past time, God still keeps his word. Even though it might be longer than what we want to wait, God still keeps his word. You still have lost loved ones that you've been praying for a while. Keep on praying. Amen. He keeps His word. Let me tell you what He did to me because of the prayers of my wife. He gave me 6 granddaughters. 6 women children. That is the 6th. 6 women children because of the prayers of my wife. We had the 2 boys and she was praying for a girl. She prayed so much for them. We didn't get the girl. But now, blammo. There's another Hebrew word, blammo. 6. God keeps His word, doesn't He? It may not be in the way or in our time that we think, but He keeps His word, doesn't He? Verse number 12, therefore sprang there even one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky and multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Wasn't that Abraham and Sarah? They didn't even know that Isaac's son Jacob was going to have 12. But then do you ever see Esau's children? Do you ever see all the dukes that Esau had? Didn't he have 12 more? We're talking about from Isaac we have Jacob and Esau, and from Jacob and Esau, yes, we have the Jacob line, which is the tribes of Israel, but you also got Esau and all of his clan. If you counted all the Jews and the Muslims in the world, is that a good group? Is that a good group? Big in number. Is that a huge number or a bad or a low number? Would you say the sand of the seas and stars of the sky? I would. How many through the ages have been Jew and born and died? From Jacob and then from Esau. So many, whole lot more than Isaac. Whole lot more than Isaac. And so we see that they died they died in faith. They were given that promise, but they hadn't seen that promise yet. They were given that promise. And we can even apply that to the rest of these. But Noah did see the promise, didn't he? Abel did see the promise, didn't he? After he was killed. Enoch did see the promise, didn't he? Noah, or I mentioned Noah. Who else? Abraham was the only one left. And they all enjoyed God's creation, didn't they? So when I'm looking again at Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 16, when it says, ask for the old paths, I think what we need to do is go back to Genesis chapters 1 through 11 to find the good paths, the old paths. I preached on that series, it was a good couple of years ago, and I might do it again because it's needful. But those first 11 chapters, we have the basis for everything on earth. And we've just seen it in these 13 verses in Hebrews chapter 1 when he goes back and he kind of gives a summing up. Let me sum up. A recounting of what happened in Genesis chapters 1 through 11. We didn't even talk about Moses. If you keep going on down, then we get into Moses and we get into all the rest of them, the judges, and then time would not permit me to speak on, and then there were judges, and then people throughout the whole Old Testament, people throughout the whole New Testament. I mean, come on. You want to look for the old paths. We don't have to go strictly to the New Testament for us in a New Testament church to look for the old paths, do we? We can certainly go to Genesis chapters 1 through 11 and find those old paths. And so again, just thinking about old-fashioned Sunday, man, isn't it good to be in the old paths? You know, I see God doing a lot of great things. First of all, God created. And then He's got His way for us to get up into heaven. We saw that with Abel. God rewards. We saw that with Enoch. God judges. We saw that with Noah. So God still judges sin. God calls men into the ministry with Abraham. And God keeps His word. We see that with Sarah. Aren't those good New Testament principles that are found in the old paths? And so once again, just a reminder on old-fashioned Sunday, seek for or ask for the old paths. Wherein is the good way? It's the good way. It's the good way. And walk therein, and you shall find rest for your souls. How many of you are looking for soul rest? Go back to the old paths. All right, let's stand to our feet with our heads bowed and our eyes